Finally, Damian Lillard has been traded, y'all. The moment we've been waiting for all summer. We got the full trade details. The Bucks receive Damian Lillard. The Blazers receive Drew Holiday, DeAndre Ayton, Toumani Camara, 2029 first-round pick, and 2 swaps. And finally, the Suns receive Yusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, Nassar Little, and Keon Johnson. Ladies and gentlemen, this is big. This is major. That changes the dynamic of the NBA, the landscape, and there's a lot to unpack here. First, we have to talk about the obvious. Damian Lillard going to the Bucks. This puts them at the top of the NBA, in my opinion. They were already one of those top teams. They've dealt with some injuries over the last few years. Chris Middleton was banged up a lot. Obviously, they lost P.J. Tucker. A couple years ago, they had Brook Lopez dealing with injuries. Giannis had knee surgery this past summer. And this was a team that needed something to come into that team and rejuvenate them at the high level. Now, when you look at the team in totality, there was very limited moves that they could make with the current infrastructure that they had. They had a lot of money tied up into a lot of different guys. So the only type of move that was out there was a move like this. And what I love about it the most is this is the perfect player to put next to a Giannis Antetokounmpo. The only other player that potentially could be better as far as teaming up with him is Steph Curry. But when you talk about the gravity, the shooting, the scoring from the perimeter that Damian Lillard puts on teams night in and night out, and you match that with the interior scoring and dynamic that Giannis brings, this could be one of the most dangerous pick and rolls that we've seen in NBA history, if not the most dominant pick and roll that we've seen in the last 10 years. This team is exactly the type of move that Damian Lillard needed in his career. They're going to be on that stage. They're going to be a heavy favorite. And when you talk about the Eastern Conference teams, I can't think of a team that can really match up with them as of right now off the top of my head. The 76ers are going to be good. We know they have certain things going on with them, the James Harden dilemma and everything that's going on there. When you talk about the Miami Heat, obviously they went on a historical run last season as a team that was on the fringe of not making the playoffs at all. And you always have to pay attention to Boston. But when you talk about one of the most dominant players over the last few years in Giannis, 2-time MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, guy who already has a ring, and you match that with Damian Lillard, one of the most dynamic point guards in the game, I don't know if there's going to be an answer for that. And then on the flip side, a lot of talk during this summer from Giannis seemed like he was hinting at potentially leaving. He was talking about the organization showing a willingness and commitment to winning, and how much he prioritizes winning, and how much he loves Milwaukee and the city and it'll always be home. But at the end of the day, he's a winner. And if he has to go somewhere else to win or to feel like he has the best chance to win, he'll do that. Now, as an owner and a GM and even a new coach and Adrian Griffin, that's not the type of things that you want to hear from your superstar player, especially considering that you won a ring not that long ago. This was one of the best answers that you could give Giannis. Hey, you think we're not as committed to winning as you? Okay, we'll show you. And just like that, they went out and got a guy in Damian Lillard that puts them probably as the heavy favorite going into the NBA season. Now, obviously, we all know basketball is a sport that has to go out and be played. It can't be won on paper. But this is a move from the franchise that, in my opinion, not only gives them a chance to win a championship, compete for a championship for the next, I don't know how many years, but this is also a type of move that has Giannis potentially being a lifelong Bucks player. This is the best answer you can give for a player who is challenging your commitment as a franchise to winning. And I have to give a round of applause to them. Top down, from the GM to the owner. This was the greatest response that I've seen when you talk about a star player questioning the commitment and the opportunity to win with you in his future. So I think that extension and contract talk that's been around Giannis's name since he's had these interviews on these podcasts and these publications. I think he did one with Time. I forget who the publication was, but he had an article where he talked. All of those questions are deaded. They're deaded. I'm scheduled to go to Milwaukee for media day for the Bucks, which is Monday. I was going and planning questions for Giannis, Drew Holiday, and Chris Middleton. Obviously, I don't know what now comes into the fold, but if everything's still going the same way, these questions are a lot different than the ones that I was going to bring the question. So great pickup, great response for the Milwaukee Bucks and for Giannis. Now, as far as Damian Lillard, it's going to be interesting because a lot of the stuff that was rumored around him for this entire trade request was Miami or nothing. I'm only going to Miami. Toronto, they shouldn't try to trade for him because he might give them a hard time. He only wants to go to Miami. I was never a believer of that. I just felt like Damian Lillard was a guy that probably didn't want to go to a situation that was slightly better or very similar to this current situation that he's in. It's about winning and competing at the highest level for the highest honor, which is the championship. And I don't think even Miami was as good of a situation as this. The only thing that Miami has over the Bucks was probably the outside stuff of basketball. The weather is nice, the taxes, the 305, things like that. But as far as trying to win not only one championship, but multiple championships, there was not a better situation for Damian Lillard out there. So I think this is a win for him. I think this is the type of team that he should have desired from the start. What he does, they need. They need a dynamic point guard coming off of the pick and roll with Giannis, who can shoot it from the logo and open up so much for everybody else as far as scoring gravity. It's going to be hard to throw a lot of people at Giannis because now you have Chris Middleton, you have Damian Lillard, Brook Lopez is a 7-footer who can knock down shots. You lose Grayson Allen, but you'll be able to make up for that on a market or elsewhere with other shooters. But like I said, the combination of Damian Lillard on the perimeter with Giannis and his interior scoring and just everything that they have. I'm excited for seeing this team and what they potentially can do. I want to see if there are some other moves now because there has been names that have kind of lingered around free agency for a while. And we were like, hey, a lot of teams are probably waiting on a Harden or Damian Lillard move before they go out and commit to some names. We have seen recently Kelly Oubre get picked up, Christian Wood. But if I'm not mistaken, I think there is a couple other names out there that could potentially be picked up now. So that's another one. And for the Blazers, the one thing I would say about the Blazers is they just needed talent. They needed talent and they needed a new direction. Luckily for them, they already have talent in their current roster makeup with Scoot Henderson, Anthony Simons, Shaedon Sharpe. You still have Jeremy Grant. Now you add in DeAndre Ayton, who is an interesting topic. We'll get to the Suns last. But DeAndre Ayton is a guy that I think the conversations around his name, they stick and they sound a lot harsher because the reality is he was the number 1 overall pick. He did get drafted above Luka and Trae Young and Jaren Jackson. He does have a $200 million contract. So when you have all of those things tied up to your name, people want to see the production match that status. Thus far, DeAndre Ayton has been a good center. He just hasn't been a very good center or an all-star level center or a guy that you think of when you hear $200 million first overall pick. And one of the main things was the fit with the Suns. Monty Williams coming in and changing the culture there and them becoming a playoff team and a team contending for championships. I don't believe DeAndre Ayton ever fit the mold of the type of center the Suns have been looking for. When you have a guy like Devin Booker, when you have Chris Paul, those are perimeter players who need the basketball to create for themselves and sometimes for others. Even with snipers like Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson sitting around them, a lot of that means DeAndre Ayton can't get the type of touches that he wants to make himself feel like he's the player he wants to be. And to be honest with you, I really think that's just an NBA thing. I think if you're not Jokic, if you're not Embiid or one of those top tier guys, not a lot of teams are throwing the ball into their center and letting them go to work. That has been what DeAndre Ayton is trying to be and what his game is predicated to being. And hopefully with Portland, it could be a change of scenery and they can let him get a little bit of those looks and have him be a focused part of the offense. But with Phoenix, especially after this past season, acquiring Bradley Beal, now a third ball handler, a third perimeter dominant player, the Suns weren't going to be able to ever put DeAndre Ayton in a position to make him feel comfortable enough to reach his fullest potential as a basketball player. Hopefully that happens in Portland. And then you could talk about the new coaching hiring that Frank Vogel that the Suns got. He's a defensive-minded coach We all know DeAndre Ayton has shown flashes with his rim protection and defense, especially on that run to the championship that the Suns had. But overall, DeAndre Ayton has had much to be desired on that end. Even his hustle and his focus on that end has been in question, which is why in last playoffs we saw Jock Landale come in and do a bunch of different things for the Suns that have left a lot of people like, man, if DeAndre Ayton just had that much hustle, we probably see him do some of the same things, but he has a desire to play a different type of way. So I think for Portland, you get a guy who's on a very monstrous contract, but you also get him in a position to where he's going to have a change of scenery. He can reset, and there has not yet been anybody to command the dominant role on his team. Now, if we're looking at it, it's probably going to be Scoot Henderson's team. It's probably going to be Shaedon Sharpe's team. One of those young guys are going to command this team. But as of right now, there is some time and opportunity for DeAndre Ayton to be a focus point because there isn't a star on this roster. So I think that's a good thing for them. I think also for Portland, you're bringing in Jrue Holiday, who's going to be a leader, who's going to be a guy who is always sought after on the market because of his defensive prowess, and he's just a very good, well-rounded guard. So eventually, at some point, the Blazers are going to be able to pivot from Jrue Holiday and make another move to another contending team. Jrue Holiday at the trade deadline, whether it's instantly, I don't know the rules with this trade, if he can be pivoted and traded again immediately. I'm not sure because this is all in real time, but I know he's going to be valuable for them in reacquiring even more assets throughout another trade. So I like that. And even if he has to stay there for half the season or until the trade deadline, I think he is a really good vet who can come in and complement some of those guys without taking too much away from them, because he can play on ball, he can play off ball, he can guard the other team's best player, because Scoot, Shaedon, Anthony Simons, they're not going to be ready for those matchups at day one. And then eventually when you do trade them, you're now talking about acquiring potentially another first-round pick and another young player. And I think that's a big-time win, considering the fact that you still also have Jeremy Grant. Now, there's going to be a lot of teams willing to pay that contract for Jeremy Grant. Probably not a long list of suitors, but when we start to get into the season and teams start to see they're one piece away or think that they're one piece away, we'll start to see a lot more teams eager to make that call. And again, when you talk about Jeremy Grant, also at the trade deadline or next season after, that's again additional assets. So I think the Portland Trailblazers are positioning themselves good to have a rich future with young talent and assets. And when you talk about their starting lineup, it ain't horrible. Scoot Henderson, maybe Jrue Holiday, Shaedon Sharpe, Jeremy Grant, Ayton, is Simons coming off the bench, is Shaedon Sharpe coming off the bench. It's going to be very interesting to see. But you have a young team with a lot going on, and then you have two veteran pieces who could fit on any playoff team looking to make an extra run, and that'll get you even more assets as far as future draft picks, multiple draft picks, and in these next coming draft classes, there are some talented players there that you could add to this young core. So I love what they're doing. And last but not least, when we talk about the Phoenix Suns, they come in and get Jusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, Nasir Little, and Keon Johnson. Now, Nasir Little and Keon Johnson are going to have a lot to prove. But luckily for them, outside of Kevin Durant, outside of Eric Gordon, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal, everybody on this team has something to prove, right? Keita Bates-Diop, all of these other guys that they brought in, they have to prove Bol that they're going to be a part of this rotation. And that's the beauty for a lot of these guys in Phoenix. So I think Jusuf Nurkic, he's going to come in, right? And he's going to be looking to potentially anchor this defense for Frank Vogel. There's a lot of chatter that a lot of people think Jusuf Nurkic can be that type of defensive anchoring for this Phoenix Suns team. And then I think you also add in Grayson Allen, who's a sniper. And I think when you talk about Devin Booker, Brad Beal, Kevin Durant, and how much attention they command from opposing defenses, anytime you can add snipers like Grayson Allen, you added Yuta Watanabe over the offseason. When you get those type of guys who are legitimate specialists as far as shooting threes, off the catch, it's always a win. So I love that the Phoenix Suns came in and took advantage of a situation where they can get some falling pieces off of the truck to help them booster up their roster, because they have a lot of holes outside of the big three that they have there. And shooting is always going to be at a premium. Perimeter defense is always going to be a premium for them. And then rebounding and interior defense. So the fact that they came in and swooped in, I think, was genius for them and James Jones. Overall, this is probably one of the best trades that I've seen a franchise make. And I think this is the A+ out of the park for the Bucks, considering what the Bucks gave up. No disrespect, but Damian Lillard and Drew Holiday are two totally different caliber players. The Bucks are going to lose perimeter defense with Drew Holiday, but the offensive powerhouse that Damian Lillard is, I think you're willing to sacrifice that. You also gave up some picks and Grayson Allen. So I think when you talk about the package and the losses that the Bucks had, this is probably one of the best trades we have seen in a while. And as far as the Blazers, I like it because of what Drew Holiday can potentially give you at some point when you move on from him. But when you talk about some of the other trade packages we've seen for guys of Damian Lillard's caliber, this is tough. This is tough. And it's not anything against the Blazers because I think the timing was not in their favor. I think the situation that they were in, where the best suitor or the most aggressive suitor was the Heat, who didn't really have much. But I will say this is probably a much better trade than the Miami Heat trades. I would much rather have Drew Holiday and DeAndre Ayton in draft capital than Tyler Hero and some of the other stuff that I was seeing be rumored to the Trailblazers. So round of applause for the Trailblazers. Round of applause for the Bucks. The Bucks are obviously the winner in this. But this is a trade that I don't think the Trailblazers should get too much hate on, because the only other option was to keep disgruntled Damian Lillard there with a young team that had no hope of winning anything, or settling for the Miami Heat, who just felt so comfortable and felt so cool that they didn't have to press that button, that they were willing to allow somebody like the Bucks come in and swoop in. We heard no rumors about the Bucks. Yeah, the Bucks may have had interest, but it was Miami. You heard Philadelphia recently. You heard Phoenix somehow. And then we had also heard Toronto. And quiet as kept, the Bucks did their due diligence quietly behind the scenes, and they struck for gold. So Miami now is probably going to have those same conversations with Jimmy Butler and Bam about the commitment to winning and trying to put the best pieces in place. Because now when I look at the landscape of the Eastern Conference, I don't know where Miami folds. They had a great run last year, but during the 82-game season, they were not good. They lost a lot of guys that played pivotal parts for them, and they didn't go out and make a move in the offseason where everybody else did. The Pacers went and got KP. The Bucks went and now have Damian Lillard. The Pacers, a young team like the Pacers, who I'm not saying is here to contend for a championship, they went and made moves. Philly made subtle moves. That's the only gauge that you can have if you're Miami. Philly's in a tough spot as well. But at least for Philly, they didn't necessarily lose anything major. Yeah, Harden is disgruntled, but he's still on a roster, and he still is report to training camp. So as of now, they have Harden, Maxey, Tobias, and Embiid. So we'll see. I'm definitely looking at the Miami Heat, but I just want to give the Milwaukee Bucks the A+++ of trades. I think you give Portland a B+, considering the situation that they were in, and I think you give the Suns I would say a B+ as well. I almost gave him an A-, but I'll give him a B+ as well. DeAndre Ayton was a guy that they have been wanting to get away from for a while now, and they were able to do that. And in doing so, they picked up some pieces that probably fit better, and they were able to get rid of the contract and the money that DeAndre Ayton was commanded. So round of applause for them. And all in all, I love this trade. I think this trade is going to be big in the NBA world. Y'all let me know y'all thoughts in the comments, especially if you are a Milwaukee Bucks fan. I would do anything to be a Bucks fan right now. This got to be one of the best feelings. You already have Giannis Antetokounmpo, and then you go out in a year where he's getting in the offseason where he's giving you every hint in the world that potentially he's out. It sounded like he was preparing Milwaukee, the entire city, the entire organization, the fan base. He was giving little nuggets and gems here and there. He was preparing you all for the day that he leaves, so there's no hard feelings. That's everything that I took from everything he was saying. His brother almost left and went to the Knicks. Like, it was so much chatter. And for their response to be to pivot and get a guy that we all thought had one destination and one destination only, I can't do anything but applaud this. I'm Pee Wee the Plug. If you're new and you like this type of content, make sure you subscribe. If you're new and you've been here, hit that like button for me. I'll see what y'all say in the comments. I'm out. Peace.